Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the final quiz of Parakh, the annual quizzing fest of IIT Patna. As you can see, the final quiz is titled Catch 22 and it is a number quiz. So let's move on to the rules. This is an under 25 quiz and there are 22 questions in the quiz. Each question carries 10 points and there will be no negative marking. In case of multiple parts to the question, points will be divided equally unless otherwise specified. Questions 4, 9, 13, 17 and 21 are star marked questions. They will be used to resolve ties. A camera icon on top left indicates that an image follows the question slide. You will have to type your answers in G-form only. You have to submit the G-form within 90 seconds after the last question is closed. There will be no rerun of questions. Any unfair means would lead to immediate disqualification. Now that the rules are out of the way, let's start with the questions. The first question. An initial competition with its orange counterpart led X's founder to switch flavors. The original formulation contained lithium citrate, which was used in various patent medicines at the times for improving moods. Lithium being used in X has been proposed as a theory for why X has its name. Though the founder never explained the name, he did promote X as having effects on mood. Because it debuted at the time of stock market crash of 1929 and the onset of the Great Depression, this was a selling point. The number of ingredients used, the number of letters in its name, and the amount of it sold are some of the other theories why X is named such. Identify X. 5 seconds more. Moving on to the next question. The famous manga series, Redacted, talks about a mysterious comic book that narrates the near future in an enthusiastic way, with childishly written text punctuating the comic book. However, the fans noticed a very strange and scary coincidence when certain illustrations in that comic actually predicted an event that happened in real life, over a decade after its release. In the mystery comic, a mercenary wearing a shirt with X written on it looks at his watch and sees that it is 10:30 am. The mercenary is depicted in the following panel dead after being pierced on a pole from a considerable height, with a vicious looking plane passing by below him. All of this is eerily similar to what actually occurred. Identify what was written on the mercenary's shirt X, or what real life event does it relate to. 5 more seconds before moving on to the next question. The third question. X is a hit comical Indian Bollywood movie with a metaphorical title. On the sole basis of the literal meaning of the title, one can easily misinterpret it to be a movie related to cricket. The plot of X is summed up as follows. A father wants to place his gloomy 75-year-old son in an old age home. The father believed that his son's pessimistic outlook might be a barrier to him breaking a certain world record. The father offered his son two options: either go to an old age home, from where he would bring him back in 16 years, or finish some specific chores he had set up in the following 6 months. The son selected the second choice, and the narrative continues. After the father passed away, a recording of him was broadcast in which he predicted that after another 43 years, a member of his family, his son, will break the record. Which film and world record is being talked about? 5 more seconds before moving on to the next question. The fourth question. Please note that this is a star mark question. A series noted for its characteristic opening style and notable discontinuity within the timeline of the show and its real-life production takes over the world by storm with the recurrent celebration of X. Intuitively thought of as a clever application of a literary device on X's original expression, it was first used as a commentary remark over Independence Day celebrations. The series soon gained traction and the first real use of expression "Y" was seen a year later, although for a completely different reason, for congratulations on the assuming of the office by the country's first female Prime Minister, rather than marking of X. Y continued to be used in the internal production team sporadically but fell into disuse until the revival of the series in 20th century. Y soon became very popular and was used frequently in a very famous sitcom, where the protagonists are obsessed with the series. In recent times, X is considered a world phenomena, with Y being the studio's trademark. Identify Y. 5 more seconds before moving on to the next question. The fifth question. Originally the number X was written in alphabets, as the Greek and Hebrew language did not have symbols to represent numbers. It was in its English translation that we saw the number X in its present form. Contrary to popular beliefs, the mention of X has been seen as a code or a riddle based on numerological reasons, also called word calculus or gematria or isopsephy, suggesting protest towards their evil emperor named Nero Caesar, which then translated to Hebrew and added to X. Funnily, a video by the YouTube channel Numberphile explaining the history of X is exactly X seconds long, depicting the common and scary occurrence of X. Identify X. 5 more seconds for the question. The sixth question. Amidst the sheer confusion and chaos during the historical confrontation, development of a classified committee took place for the research of novel methods to gain an upper hand. The development took place at a location after which it was named, under the guidance of a science academic, the events of which later came to define the plot of many movies of the modern day, and still continues to be one of the most infamous events of history. The efforts of the committee culminated half a decade later during the Dry Run, which was codenamed X. It is quite ironic as to how the event was named, considering what it achieved against what its doctrine preaches. The completion of X had achieved something that the mankind had never achieved before, giving rise to a legendary phase. Identify X. 5 more seconds for the question. The seventh question. Following the evoking of an age-old customs tax, one of the most popular brands of the modern-day world threatened to go out of business. The tax law was invoked in view of rising losses of association of indigenous companies selling the same product in the nation. In order to prevent their company from going bankrupt, they bootlegged their own product and came up with another company named X. X mass released their products at a cheap price to bypass the customs tax so that the original company could prevent themselves from losing excessive revenue in the tax. The new line of products had a distinctive style among all their products, having parallels with the logo of the original company, which gave X its name. This distinctive style was very similar to one of their biggest competitors at the time, who was part of the alliance. The style has been passed down throughout the generations and still continues to be one of the trademarks of the rival company. Foiling a grueling contest among the companies involved, X fell into disuse. Recently, one of the products of X was auctioned for a whopping amount of about $100,000. The original company rose to popularity and is known for endorsing the biggest sports clubs of the modern time. Identify X and the original company. 5 more seconds before the next question. The eighth question. Just before the release of the final season of a popular fantasy series, a YouTube video reached millions of views, featuring the main antagonists of the show. The video was a parody of a famous rock song which is known for its riff. The song consists of the repetition of a certain set of beats throughout the song and has become sort of an anthem in recent times. The video drew parallels with the original lyrics of the song and the world building of the show. It showcased the feelings and emotions from the antagonist's POV. After an underwhelming conclusion to the series, many comments mocked about the parody having a better character development than the show itself. Identify the parody song and the antagonist group. 5 more seconds for the question. The ninth question. Please note that this is a star mark question. Since its inception, X has been responsible for the selection of 23 groups for a specific purpose. Each of the selected groups are characterized by a unique code name subject to the conditions and aftermath of previous experiments of X. Y was the pioneer among the selected groups and was assigned to a task that had never been achieved before by mankind, within a stipulated deadline of a decade. It was named taking its origins from Roman mythology and signify the connection between two realms and a recurrent number in human history, believed to have mystic powers and bearer of good fortune. All the members of Y eventually completed their missions with a certain pattern common between the naming of a specific component, deriving its roots from Y. The detailed events of the formation and working of Y was recently retold in a series adaptation by a famous animation studio of a previously released film and novel in 20th century. The protagonist of the series is very well known, with eidetic memory and quick wit being his strong suit in another TV show. Identify the group Y. 5 more seconds for the question. The 10th question. A few years back, in his famous TV show Conan invited a famous martial artist. After fooling around for some time, Conan goes on to recreate a very special move developed by a legendary martial artist. Even though it may seem counterintuitive, the close proximity and torque applied makes the technique several times more powerful than your regular strike. A variation of the move was shown in a two-volume martial arts movie directed by a world-famous director. The technique is now used by professionals as an exercise. Identify the technique shown in the thumbnail. 5 more seconds before the next question. The 11th question. Recently, the company X partnered with a mobile game as part of an April Fool's joke. The collaboration was made based upon the similarities between the mascots and for their common passive-aggressive behavior. X has been known for making prank videos and giving funny notifications to remind users to practice more. In 2020, building upon the new feature introduced in the previous year's video, showed the two mascots taking to the streets and pestering users to quit procrastinating. While the mascot from the game helped X in the making of the video, using an aggressive approach it is known for to persuade its users. X mascot would feature in the popular game to provide a limited edition custom spell. Identify X and the game. 5 more seconds for the question. The 12th question. One of the most prolific theories in the field of modern mathematics found its origin while solving the mundane problems of a certain city. The problem piqued the interest of a legendary mathematician who lived in the vicinity of the city. The mathematician was obsessed with the problem due to the lack of a concrete structure or mathematical field which catered to such problems. Interestingly enough, it was concluded that the problem didn't have a solution, which subsequently led to the development of a new field of mathematics. Sometime in the future, the Soviets bombed two bridges in the city, which coincidentally made the problem solvable. Identify the original problem and what field was developed out of it. 5 more seconds for the question. Moving on to the 13th question. Please note that this is a star mark question. One of the most important sites in redacted national history. This statement was quoted following one of the most elaborate hunt of a historical missing persons case. The site is a very common place used in daily life. The site was found 5 centuries later in the early 2010s in the vicinity of the original place of rest, as reported by contemporaries of the figure then. The tale of the person X was narrated by one of the greatest writers of all time in the form of a play with the same name. It depicts a tragedy where X resorts to killing of his kin for the temporary access to the throne, only to be killed shortly afterwards in a battle that signaled the end of his dynasty and marked the closing of an epoch. The story of X was retold in various forms: a movie at the end of the 20th century, a song in a children's TV show, and finally as a musical. Till date, X's killing of a couple of children is widely regarded as the biggest mystery of the nation. Identify the historical figure X. 5 more seconds before the next question. The 14th question. X first began serialization back in 1997, and since then it has been collected into over 90 volumes, and has been a critical and commercial success worldwide. When the live-action series of X was confirmed for Netflix, fans began to rally to see if they can push the streaming service in the direction of hiring Y, especially because the majority of characters in X play a certain role for which Y is famous, and due to recent events, he is not allowed to play this famous character in films. Fans started to find similarities between Y and the character X with the title of redacted King, which led to the petition to cast Y. Identify the famous Guinness World Record holding series X and Y who you might have heard about in the news recently. 5 more seconds for the question. The 15th question. China's claim to the region shown, which stretches for around 1200 miles, has sparked hostilities within the neighboring countries. Before it was known as the X Line, it went by a different name. This name was altered when China lost control of Taiwan and the Communist Party permitted the North Vietnamese government to construct a radar station. Identify X. 5 more seconds before the next question. The 16th question. Once during the Pandavas' stay in Vanaprastha, Arjuna encountered a strange composite being, which was a combination of 9 different animals. Arjuna was mesmerized but felt equally frightened and unsettled to look at this complicated life form. He raised his bow, deciding to shoot at it, but changed his decision upon the epiphany that it was Mahavishnu himself. It is quite interesting how a being that is a composition of 9 different species is considered to be divine, but not a monster, which is very much in contrast to its Greek counterparts. To quote from Iliad, the seven-headed snake, Hydra, and the creature which is a composite of lion, goat, and snake, Chimera, are considered to be of immoral make. They were clearly monsters meant to be destroyed. Thus, as history unfolded, Bellerophon killing the Chimera and Hercules slaying the Hydra are the ideal Greek hero figurines, who bring order and make the world less complicated. This is very much in contrast to the idea of the anonymous voice enlightening Arjuna about the mind, which has the ability to handle differences, and thus not to harm the creature, but to submit to it, because it, unlike you, is divine. The two are very different worldviews. Identify the creature. 5 more seconds for the question. Now for the 17th question. Please note that this is a star marked question. At the start of the 20th century, one of the board members of a well-known national alliance in America set up his own food product and named it by combining the two constituents of a chemical compound. 4 years later, the alliance ripped off the original product and came up with X. A fierce rivalry followed for the rest of the century, which ended with the eventual victory of X due to better advertising and industrial connections. In order to set the two apart, the Alliance revamped their design for X in the 1950s. Even though any relation between the design and religious iconography was denied by the designer's son, his roots as Catholic and his father's as a Freemason indicated otherwise. The characteristic design contains a certain number of rings with an equal number of emblems etched below it, indicative of one of the most wealthy and popular military orders, while the numbers suggestive of their formation. In recent times, ex-consumers are broadly classified into two groups, breakers and twisters, and has grown to become the largest brand in its market. Identify X and the controversial detail in its design. 5 more seconds before the next question. The 18th question. The following random word triplets represent the nomenclature of the system followed by a company X. The name of the company is in the form of a rhetorical question, which is self-descriptive as to why the nomenclature system is structured that way. The words assigned by the system involves breaking of a large structure into numerous small squares of predefined size. The triplets uniquely identify each of these squares, which vastly simplifies a well-established number-based identification system. Identify X and what the list of words represent. 5 more seconds for the question. The 19th question. Originally a folk song, X is recited in modern days as a nursery rhyme. The lyrics of the song were changed slightly so as to sever the links to its underlying dark tale. The original song had themes related to religious superiority and clashes with monarchy. It follows the execution of a certain number of upper clergymen by burning them on a pyre, due to their covert plan of assassinating the queen. The affliction in the rhyme is just an allusion to the unfaltering faith of the clergymen in their religion, with the animals being the men themselves. The queen, infamous for her atrocious acts, was given the nickname of Redacted. The nickname is very popular in recent times due to its connection with a paranormal practice, often played as a prank among school kids to boast about one's courage. The practice involves chanting an incantation a specific number of times in presence of reflective surface to summon the spirit, called by the given nickname. It is also the name of a very popular cocktail. Identify the nursery rhyme X. 5 more seconds before moving on to the next question. The 20th question. The following image shows a commemorative coin in celebration of a famous author's 75th death anniversary. The author has been widely regarded to hold an equivalent position in science fiction as to Shakespeare in literature, often calling him one of the progenitors of the genre. Following the release of the coin by the government, the fans were furious, since the depiction of the items from the author's novels were wildly inaccurate. Despite the suggestive name of the machine, one of the main reasons for their outrage was the fact that the coin had made a mistake in one particular detail. Identify the detail. 5 more seconds for the question. The 21st question. Please note that this is a star marked question. The movie X is a story of a marriage and life gone wrong based on one's initial choice. Taking inspiration from a famous Italian poem, the movie explores the themes of treachery, fraud, greed, violence, anger, etc., represented by Y in its own ways. The poem itself explains the path taken by one individual through Y, where in each level he learns of the stories of the individual as well as how his sins match up to these levels. The deeper he traveled, the more he realized the complexity and the depth of the sin, and its longer lasting toll on humanity. Originally envisioned to be a horror film, the director eventually wrote it as a heist film with elusive diagrams explaining the complicated plot. The image will be shown on the next slide. You need to identify X and Y. This is the image. Mm-hmm. 5 more seconds before the next question. So the final question for the quiz. What is this the recipe of? Please refer to the image and try to find a connection. So that was the end of the quiz. Submit your G-forms within the next 90 seconds. I'll put up a timer on the screen, and once the timer ends, the G-form will be closed. One minute remaining. Last 30 seconds. The last 10 seconds for you to submit your G forms. And that's it. So the quiz is over and the G forms are closed. Thank you for attending the quiz. We hope you enjoyed the quiz. The quiz was conducted by Quiz Club IIT Patna under its quizzing festival Parakh, and this was the second season of it. We hope to see you in the answers discussion of the numbers quiz in the live stream. Thank you.